Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back into the show. Yet another episode of Crushing Fantasy Football. I am Bryce Lockridge, your host of the show, guys. Today, I'm going to be giving you 5 must-own wide receivers. I've been looking through the ADP, and some of the draft value on these players is just ridiculous. It borders being laughable. So I'm going to get into the first player on my list, and that is T. Higgins. Now, this is a guy who obviously is the number 2 wide receiver in his offense. I love Jamar Chase this year. I mean, obviously, we saw last year that he's one of the best wide receivers in the entire NFL, one of the best wide receivers you can have in fantasy. But as far as pure draft value is concerned, I think that T. Higgins is just as valuable as Jamar Chase. I mean, look, this is a guy who you could get at the end of the third round, and depending on what league that you're in, he might slip to the beginning of the fourth round. So that, considering the fact that, this is a guy who we know is going to command a ridiculous target share on his team. I mean, last year in games where he played with Jamar Chase, he had a 25% team target share. I mean, think about that. As the number 2 wide receiver in his offense, he had a 25% team target share. He is the only wide receiver in the NFL that's a number 2 wide receiver in his offense that commands such a ridiculous amount of targets. So that and couple that with the fact that this is a guy who had a 9.8% catch rate above expected last year. I mean, just think about that. This guy caught almost 10% more passes than he was supposed to. So, I mean, the overall ability of this guy is insane. His ability to, create separation in his routes. And, even if he's in a cluttered part of the field, which he often is because he operates over the middle of the field, he has the ability to make contested catches. So this is a guy with tremendous talent. He's going to command a ridiculous target share. He's going to be a prominent red zone threat and what might be the highest scoring offense in the entire NFL. The T. Higgins draft value is absolutely insane. Next player I have here on my list is going to be Juju SmithSchuster. Now, I've talked about him so much this offseason, but I'm probably never going to shut up about Juju SmithSchuster because this is a guy who is very sure-handed. He doesn't drop a whole lot of passes, and he gets to be the number 1 receiver in the Chiefs' offense. I mean, look, this is a guy who, he's going to dominate within the red zone, right? Him and Travis Kelce are going to see all the targets when this team has their scoring opportunities. And the main reason for this is because the Chiefs, more than any other team in the NFL, they do not run the ball when they're within the 5-yard line, nearly as much as any other team. I mean, any team, when they're within the 5-yard line, they're handing the ball to their running backs. They're trying to pound the ball into the end zone. The Chiefs don't do that. They love to run trick plays, even in short goal-to-goal opportunities. They love to, throw to their tight ends, throw to their number 1 wide receivers, even more often than they run the ball, which is absolutely insane. But that means tons of red zone targets for both Juju Smith-Schuster and Travis Kelce. So these 2 pass catchers are absolutely going to dominate this year. Everybody knows how big I am on Travis Kelce. And as far as a receiver, I'm huge on Juju Smith-Schuster. I think that he has top 8 wide receiver upside, and he's going sometimes as like the 30th wide receiver off the board in drafts. It's almost hilarious to me how low this guy's being drafted. You need to get this guy in your fantasy team. Next player I have here on my list is going to be Justin Jefferson. Now, if I were to come out right now and predict the player that I think is going to be the number 1 wide receiver in all of fantasy football this year, it would without a doubt be Justin Jefferson. Now, the reason for this is because we're talking about a guy who is one of the most talented wide receivers in the NFL. When it comes to his sheer athleticism, his route running ability, his hands, this guy has absolutely no flaws as a wide receiver. There is nothing that this guy doesn't have. Okay? This guy has everything in his arsenal as far as wide receiver talent. And he averaged almost 10 targets per game last year. I mean, think about that. Like, this is a field stretching, big play wide receiver with home run hitting abilities that averages close to 10 targets a game. He had 167 targets in 17 games last year. That is absolutely insane. The target share should be pretty similar this year, considering the offense is very much the same. I mean, Adam Thielen's going to be the wide receiver too. They're going to be run heavy with Dalvin Cook. They're going to, use Dalvin Cook in play action to set up bomb opportunities for Justin Jefferson to feast down the field. Considering the fact that he's coming back to the exact same role in his offense, and he has just such a tremendous talent level, I think that this guy's going to be the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy. I really do. So even though you have to spend a first-round pick to get him, I think that he's absolutely worth it, and he is an absolute must-own wide receiver this year. Next player on my list is going to be Michael Thomas. Now, guys, let's not forget how good Michael Thomas was just a few years ago. And in the games that he played last year during that small sample, he had a 33% team target share. I mean, what even is that? A 33% team target share? That is absolutely ridiculous. And couple that with the fact that he's got Jameis Winston slinging him the rock. We know that Jameis Winston puts up awesome fantasy numbers for his wide receivers. Remember the years with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I mean, their fantasy numbers were awesome when Jameis Winston was slinging them the rock. I mean, we know that Jameis Winston has the ability to turn the ball over a little more often than you would like him to, but this doesn't necessarily hurt the fantasy output of his wide receivers. In fact, it helps it because he is never afraid to just chuck the ball down the field as far as he can. And, he's a quarterback that doesn't mind taking a risk. And, this is very good for his fantasy wide receivers. You now insert, one of the best receivers in the league in Michael Thomas, and Jameis Winston has the ability to produce top 5 wide receiver numbers for his number 1 wide receiver in Michael Thomas. He has the outside shot, the ceiling to finish as the number 1 wide receiver in all of fantasy football. All right, next player on my list here is Tim Patrick. I've talked about him a lot this offseason as well. I think that he might hands down be like the best value in the draft. I mean, this is a guy who they just signed to a massive contract extension. The Broncos love Tim Patrick. He flies so under the radar, but he is a tremendously talented wide receiver. He can run routes. He can beat you on any part of the field. He's an alpha X that can, bust out a huge play and win you a week with a 50-yard touchdown pass on any given week. He now has one of the best deep ball throwers of all time in Russell Wilson to sling him the rock. He is going to be a prominent red zone target. I mean, everybody's talking up Jerry Jeudy, but Jerry Jeudy hasn't really shown to be a dominant red zone target yet. Okay, so I have reason to believe that either Courtland Sutton or Tim Patrick are going to be the lead red zone targets for this team due to their size. I mean, size dominates in the red zone. Tim Patrick and Courtland Sutton have the size. They are probably going to be the team's top red zone threat. And I honestly think that that Tim Patrick has a chance to lead this wide receiver room in touchdowns. So, the scoring opportunities are going to be there. The big play ability is always there for Tim Patrick. He only needs 5 or 6 targets a game with Russell Wilson throwing him the ball to produce awesome fantasy numbers. And he's going 100 spots later than Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy in the draft. I mean, the draft value here is absolutely ridiculous. Tim Patrick might be the best value in the entire draft. All right, guys, these are the 5 receivers that you need to draft if you want to win your fantasy league. Catch you later.